Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. The Department of Justice and several other government agencies say foreign actors did not manipulate the 2020 election. Moderna tests its COVID-19 vaccine on children younger than 12. They're the youngest participants to get an mRNA vaccine in the U.S. 4 states and a territory are joining forces with Texas. That's as a coalition of 15 states and territories are suing Google for what they describe as anti-competitive practices. The U.S. is bracing for the most migrants at the southwest border in 2 decades. That's according to the head of Homeland Security. And Facebook censors an online Christian ministry's activity, but the group is left wondering why. That and more on NTD News. In a sharp reversal from December, several federal agencies now say there was no evidence of foreign interference in the 2020 election. NTD's Christina Kim has the story.
A joint statement from the DOJ and DHS says the U.S. worked in unprecedented ways to combat foreign interference in the 2020 election. They say no foreign government manipulated the election. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence, or ODNI, released similar conclusions. This is in direct opposition to an earlier report from then Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe. He said that China, Iran, and Russia did interfere in the 2020 election. The ODNI's new report makes 5 assessments. First, it says no foreign actor tried to alter technical aspects of the voting process. This includes things like vote tabulation or voter registration. Second, it said Russia tried to undercut President Biden's candidacy, support former President Trump, and undermine public confidence in the election system. Third, it says Iran took steps to undermine Trump's campaign and sow division in the U.S. But the DOJ says these claims are either inflated or fake. Fourth, it says some other foreign actors, including Cuba and Venezuela, took small steps to try to influence the election because of financial motivations. But the report did not list evidence to back this up. For example, the report says, quote, Cuban intelligence probably conducted some low-level activities to undermine Trump's re-election. Fifth, the report says China considered interfering in the U.S. election, but didn't actually take steps to influence the outcome. The report says they're confident this happened because they believe China wants stability with the U.S. and didn't think either candidate was worth the risk of being caught. But in December, Ratcliffe, who led 17 intelligence agencies at the time, said there was interference from China. He said alternative viewpoints on China's election influence were not tolerated or encouraged in the highly politicized climate. Christina Kim, NTD News.
The president and vice president are touring the country to promote their $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. Biden is making a stop in Pennsylvania, and Harris is paying a visit to Denver. NTD's Kevin Hogan has the updates.
President Biden departed the White House, beginning a tour across 6 states to pitch his relief plan. On his way, reporters asked him if he plans to visit the border amid a surge in illegal immigrants.
Not at the moment.
Biden has said little about the spike in illegal immigrants at the border, which is expected to worsen in the coming months. And reporters also asked him which other countries are going to receive vaccine doses from the U.S.
I've been talking with several countries already. I'll let you know that very shortly.
Biden stepped off Marine One and walked across the tarmac while wearing his mask to board Air Force One. He left Joint Base Andrews en route to Pennsylvania. Also in the midday, Vice President Harris and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff left Los Angeles for their next stop on their Help Is Here tour, Denver, Colorado. The president and VP are traveling in an attempt to make sure voters know how the aid can help them and that Democrats passed it despite all Republicans opposing it. Biden visited Chester, Pennsylvania. It's just outside of Philadelphia and close to his hometown of Wilmington, Delaware, where he's expected to spend the night. He gave reassurance to Kristen and James Smith.
You should be aware, more help is on the way for real.
They're the owners of Smith Flooring, which is a minority-owned business and a certified women-owned business. Retail sales in February were down about 3%, according to the Census Bureau. But Biden's economic team hopes the payments from the relief package can help bolster businesses. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Moderna has started testing their COVID-19 vaccine on children 12 years old and younger. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story and a bird's-eye view of the pandemic.
Moderna is the first American company to test their mRNA COVID-19 vaccine on children younger than 12. The youngest they'll vaccinate are 6-month-old babies and look to enroll over 6,000 kids in their study. Pfizer told us they've started their trial on 12 to 15-year-old kids, over 2,000 participants. No results published yet, but they said they'll share some of it later this year. Pfizer also plans to eventually test their vaccine on 5 to 11-year-olds, but they didn't mention trials on anyone younger than that. And onto the AstraZeneca vaccine, one we don't use in the U.S. Some European countries, like Sweden, aren't taking any chances and have suspended its use for now. AstraZeneca says 37 people reportedly developed blood clots after getting the shot, but over 17 million people have gotten the vaccine. The European Union's drug regulator says there's no evidence that the vaccine causes blood clots.
These are very rare thrombo events or blood clots. We need to evaluate these very, very carefully. At the ad hoc meeting today, we will have a further update. But as I said, it's Thursday when we expect the evaluation to conclude.
Italian prosecutors say they seized a batch of nearly 400,000 of shots of AstraZeneca vaccine. They say they did that because a man died hours after getting the shot. And now let's take a look at the CCP virus trends. Here are the numbers on screen. In the United States, the 7-day new case average shot up on the 8th, but that was short-lived. We're now down to 54,340 new case average, the lowest it's been since January's high. The death rate is falling, down to around 1,190, and new hospital admissions are also descending overall. Lastly, the CDC is warning spring breakers, asking them to think twice before partying without the mask.
We have seen footage of people enjoying spring break festivities maskless. I'm pleading with you for the sake of our nation's health. These should be warning signs for all of us. Cases climbed last spring. They climbed again in the summer. They will climb now if we stop taking precautions when we continue to get more and more people vaccinated.
The Transportation Security Administration says over 1.35 million people took a flight on Friday, the most they've seen this year. And that's it for this roundup. Back to you, Steph.
More states are standing up against Google. 5 attorneys general are joining Texas's antitrust lawsuit against the tech giant.
Our coalition is going after Google for its anti-competitive practices that eliminate their competition for online display advertising. We believe the free market, not a monopolist, should decide how internet ads are offered. We're also suing Google for its unlawful, secret price-fixing agreement with Facebook.
Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton led the effort and filed the lawsuit in December last year. He filed an amended complaint on Monday alleging Google of deceptive practices. Attorneys general from Florida, Nevada, Alaska, Montana, and Puerto Rico are now joining a coalition of 10 states in a lawsuit against Google. That brings the total number of plaintiffs to 14 states and 1 territory.
New allegations have surfaced in this case. Despite promising users that text messages and WhatsApp are end-to-end encrypted, Google holds the encryption keys to billions of WhatsApp texts backed up on the Google Drive. Right now, this company collects around 7,000 data points on each user.
Arkansas, Idaho, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Utah are also a part of this coalition. Paxton says if they win this lawsuit, Google will be made to return digital footprints to its users and pay hundreds of billions in financial penalties. Texas is coming for you, Google, Paxton says. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
A high-profile conservative voice has come out to endorse a Senate candidate for the 2020 primaries. The challenger is an outside candidate in the Republican Party. NTD's Steve Lance brings us more.
Former National Security Advisor to Trump, General Michael Flynn, is endorsing Pastor Jackson Lohmeyer of Oklahoma for the United States Senate. Lohmeyer is challenging incumbent Senator James Lankford in the Republican primary. Lohmeyer believes Oklahomans are looking for strong and principled leaders.
We need strong men, strong women who are going to be willing to fight, who have a backbone and will never bow down to the cancel culture phenomenon that is trying to erase and eradicate who we are as a people.
Getting the endorsement of General Flynn this early in the contest could be a big boost for Lohmeyer.
We need fearless warriors in Washington, D.C. right now.
Lohmeyer presents himself as a constitutionalist who will protect the things that matter most to American families.
We need strong men, strong women who are going to be willing to stand up, fight, and defend the United States Constitution, because it's the United States Constitution that defends our faith, our families, and our freedoms.
We sat down with General Flynn after the announcement to ask him why he's endorsing Jackson Lohmeyer.
He's a warrior. He's a fighter. He's a man of faith. He's committed to conservative values.
Many Americans are feeling hopeless after the presidential election, but General Flynn is firm about the power of getting involved in the process.
It's vital. It's like the blood that's flowing through my body. That's how vital it is for people in this country, for patriots in this country. If you feel a sense of patriotism, for you to get involved in your communities, local, state, and then federal, as we're here to talk about, endorsing Jackson Lohmeyer to run for U.S. Senate.
General Flynn is expected to endorse other candidates in different races throughout the country. The Senate Republican primary here in Oklahoma will be one to keep your eyes on. Steve Lance, NTD News, Tulsa.
Critical race theory has been making its way into school studies and staff trainings. People are told to examine their whiteness and put people into either racist or anti-racist categories. NTD's Christina Kim speaks to one professor who's speaking out.
Professor Aaron Kinsvater recently made waves with a video he posted on YouTube. In it, he pushes against the dominance of critical race theory. The professor teaches in the graduate counseling program at the University of Vermont, specializing in adult learning and mental health. Critical race theory looks at society through a racial lens, specifically how to grapple with the, quote, history of white supremacy. Kinsvater emphasizes that he never means to dismiss any discrimination people face. He made the video because he's concerned how the teachings would impact school policy and his students and the people they counsel. After posting the video, he received backlash from the school's administration. They said he was anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion, and asked how he would respond to concerns that he was a member of an alt-right cult.
Another administrator contacted me today and suggested that my videos indicate that I need therapy.
Kinsvater says racism is a complex and nuanced topic. But when it's boiled down to a black and white issue where people are either racist or anti-racist, good or evil, this prevents honest and constructive discussions and results in emotional reactions, including depression and anxiety. He describes a teach-in called Turning Towards Whiteness, which reportedly linked a number of societal ills to white people, and says the school has accepted and pushed these teachings.
Critical race theory is reflected in the diversity, equity, and inclusion standards that we're being asked, required really, to introduce into each of our classes.
So Kinsvater introduced critical race theory in his own way. He presents the theory alongside voices that challenge the ideology. But because he showed different viewpoints, Kinsvater says he was the object of what he calls two struggle sessions, a communist tactic to publicly shame people for their views. The administration called the alternative viewpoints in Kinsvater's course harmful, but never defined what harm means.
We're not playing the definition game, we're playing the power game. And the term harm is used like a cudgel to gain compliance with the ideology.
His students, however, have been open to discussion. Professor Kinsvater says those who oppose critical race theory only do so in a whispered way because they fear the backlash. But he says it doesn't mean someone is racist because they question the ideology. He encourages people to meet others with different views. Doing so can do wonders and help move our country forward, he says. Christina Kim, NTD News.
There's a petition from UVM's Sisters of Color calling for the professor to resign. They say his video is harmful to communities of color. He responded saying there's not a chance that he would resign. And a small group of Christian evangelists say they met with an unpleasant surprise when Facebook censored their activities. And they say they can't figure out why. NTD's Don Tran has that story.
Christians have been ministering and spreading the gospel for millennia, but one ministry in Milwaukee, Wisconsin does their work online. The United Fellowship of Jesus was founded in 2013 by Nick and Leslie Rich. Nick says social media has played a large role in helping him reach out to the brokenhearted and people in need.
I had a guy that was going to commit suicide, and I was able to minister to him and talk him out of it, and encourage him and explain to him what he had to live for, and to look at the good and positive things instead of looking at the negative.
Over the last 9 months, Nick's ministry has been growing on Facebook, but the social media giants blocked him from posting his religious services and from going live. They said he violated their policy on spamming. They also directed him to their community standards, which shows several traits that they consider spamming, but they didn't specify which of these traits they found in his content.
And it also, within those community standards, goes to the point of threatening that I could be actually deactivated off of Facebook as the ultimate thing, when I've done nothing to affect anyone's safety or harm anyone except for tell the truth and try to give people hope in the midst of this pandemic.
Nick says he's not the only Christian being blocked and restricted by Facebook. Other people from online ministries have also been penalized by Facebook for invalid reasons or for seemingly no reason at all. Nick says it's an act of religious discrimination.
Christians come on and they preach they put on scriptures, videos that are to help people. They're ministering and evangelizing. They get hit and banned for 10 or 15 days. You're affecting my ministry at the same time because now I can't go live on Facebook and I can't be able to reach those people. And what if that person commits suicide that my ministry was just trying to connect with?
Nick says America was built on freedom of speech, and it's a principle that's slowly being eroded today. We contacted Facebook for comments, but they did not respond. Don Tran, NTD News.
And this week, Congress is set to consider an immigration bill called the American Dream and Promise Act. But some are concerned the rising border crisis could make it tougher to pass immigration reform bills. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has more about what Congress members are saying on immigration reform.
A hot topic on Capitol Hill today, immigration and the likelihood of passing an immigration bill. It seems that Senate leaders are on total polar opposite when it comes to this topic. Well-known Republican Senator Lindsey Graham saying that the current situation at the border will make it tougher to pass an immigration bill. But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer still says it's his deepest desire to do so.
And so we're going to try to do everything we can for as bold an immigration bill as we can get. Plain and simple. We'll see where our Republican colleagues are.
This week, the House is set to consider a bill that would allow illegal immigrant statuses to be changed and address deportation policies. Representative Ted Budd already proposing an amendment to that bill to hold sanctuary cities accountable. Essentially, Budd wants to make it possible for victims of crimes committed by illegal immigrants to sue sanctuary cities. Even though it's more likely to pass an immigration bill through the Democrat-controlled House, it faces steep odds in the Senate. A number of GOP senators speaking out about the issue today.
Whether it is Chinese money laundering, whether it is human trafficking, you name it, exploiting our open border.
And what's happened in the last 6 weeks?
Democrat Senator Dick Durbin suggests that the Biden administration should have a chance to respond to the crisis at the border.
Let's assume for a second they're successful in doing it. In 6 weeks from now, we don't have a situation that's as challenging as the one today. Does that mean the Republicans will come forward for immigration reform? I'm not sure. But I think we need to deal with this reality at the border.
Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas is set to make his first public appearance before the House tomorrow, so many Congress members are looking forward to what solutions on immigration he has to bring to the table. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
The U.S. is on pace to encounter the most migrants attempting to illegally cross the border in 2 decades. That's according to the head of Homeland Security. He's also defending the Biden administration's handling of the influx. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
Alejandro Mayorkas, head of Homeland Security, acknowledged on Tuesday that the number of migrants illegally entering the U.S. has spiked during President Joe Biden's first 2 months in office. And he says we can expect a whole lot more. In a statement, he said, "We are on pace to encounter more individuals on the southwest border than we have in the last 20 years. Mayorkas also defended the Biden administration's response to the situation at the border, which many have described as a growing crisis, including Democrat Senator Joe Manchin. But despite the growing influx and FEMA's deployment to deal with the overwhelming number of unaccompanied youths, both the White House and Mayorkas have avoided using the term crisis."
Does FEMA's arrival at the border mean that the administration feels what is happening down at the border is a disaster?
I know that we always get into the fun of labels around here, but I would say our focus is on solutions. And
Mayorkas says the situation at the southwest border is difficult. He says they're focusing on the path forward, but didn't list any changes to immigration policy. Republicans say Biden's moves to rescind Trump-era immigration policies essentially served as a welcome mat for illegal immigrants. But Mayorkas is instead blaming the Trump administration for the situation at the border. Mayorkas says, "Our goal is a safe, legal, and orderly immigration system that is based on our bedrock priorities: to keep our borders secure, address the plight of children as the law requires, and enable families to be together." He noted that he himself was brought to the U.S. as an infant by his parents, who believed in the hope of America. He said many more families arriving have the same hope. But a number of politicians, including Democrat Representative Vicente Gonzalez, are warning of the dangers the immigrants face making the journey, including sexual assault and extortion by the cartels, which are only becoming more empowered by and even fanning the influx. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
Coming up, a district attorney in San Francisco is facing a recall led by former San Francisco mayoral candidate. And while this year has been one of the hardest ever for restaurants in New York City, we look at how one spot managed to survive. That and more on NTD News. California's Governor Gavin Newsom is trying to put a stop to his own recall. This after more than 2 million people signed a petition to challenge Newsom in a special election before his term ends. The California governor claims the recall is a partisan effort backed by Republicans, anti-vaxxers, QAnon conspiracy theorists, and anti-immigrant Trump supporters. And he asks his Twitter followers to help stop the movement. The California Democratic Party also announced it is contributing $250,000 to the Stop the Republican Recall campaign. But the spokesperson of the Recall Gavin 2020 campaign says it's not a Democrat or a Republican issue. It's because residents are unhappy with the state's ongoing lockdowns, high poverty and homeless rates, and high income taxes. Another California leader is facing a recall effort. A new campaign is collecting signatures to recall San Francisco's district attorney. NTD's Jason Blair has more.
San Francisco District Attorney Chesa Boudin is facing a recall effort after a year in office. It's organized by former San Francisco mayoral candidate Richie Greenberg.
So this all started the very first weekend of January, which was when we had that unfortunate accident, the hit and run of a paroled felon by Mr. Boudin.
Boudin let the criminal go free but on parole. The felon later crashed a stolen vehicle into 2 pedestrians, killing them on New Year's Eve. Many complaints from the recall supporters cite a noticeable increase in crime. One person commented, "Increased amount of crimes, burglaries, robberies in our neighborhood with no consequences." Another said that Boudin is being too lenient on criminals. "We need a DA that puts the safety of its law-abiding citizens above those of criminals." Boudin released a statement regarding the recall last week, saying he isn't surprised that the people who opposed his election are now trying to undo the will of the voters here through a Republican-led recall effort. However, Richie Greenberg says it's a bipartisan issue. There are 29 co-proponents of the recall campaign.
We have 15 women, 14 men. A vast majority are either independent or no party preference alignment. And there's a few Republicans, we've got Democrats, we've got young, old. It is a complete fabrication to call this a Republican-led effort.
The campaign will have 5 months to gain just over 51,000 signatures. If the goal is met, Mayor London Breed will appoint a replacement DA until a new election is held. Jason Blair, NTD News, San Francisco.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is facing calls for multiple investigations. The next could be whether his office interfered in the DOJ's nursing home probe.
Senator Chuck Grassley wants the Attorney General to investigate whether any state officials obstructed the DOJ's COVID-19 nursing home probe. It comes after a data disclosure revealed that nearly 15,000 nursing home residents in New York State died of the virus. That's almost double the amount previously made known. The New York Post reported last week that Governor Cuomo's top aide admitted to hiding nursing home data so the feds wouldn't find out. And New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is calling for a separate investigation. It follows reports that Cuomo's vaccine czar Larry Schwartz is contacting county executives to gauge their loyalty amid the governor's sexual harassment probe.
If vaccine supply is being given out for political reasons, that in many ways is the single worst thing we've heard on all of these scandals, and they're all horrible.
Schwartz told the Post he did not discuss vaccines in the conversations and that he did nothing wrong. But de Blasio said if true, the action is the definition of corruption.
On top of the investigation of the nursing home scandal, the investigation of the sexual harassment and molestation, but now on top of it, there needs to be an investigation of why a senior official in the governor's office clearly tried to link vaccine supply to political support.
Cuomo is facing allegations that he sexually harassed or behaved inappropriately towards 6 women. He denies touching any women inappropriately. The White House press secretary discussed the accusations Monday.
We find them troubling. The president finds them troubling, hard to read, and every woman who steps forward needs to be treated with dignity and respect.
She says New York's Attorney General is pursuing an independent investigation into Cuomo.
And the president believes that's appropriate, as does the vice president. The investigation needs to be both quick and thorough, consistent with how serious these allegations are.
On Sunday, President Biden said he wants to see the results of the investigation before commenting on whether Cuomo should resign.
After a year of shutdowns, New York City is slowly coming back to life again. NTD's Arian Pazdar takes a look at one of the hardest years ever for the restaurant industry and how one spot survived it.
Exactly 1 year ago, restaurants in New York City had to close their doors because of government shutdowns. After some time, they were allowed to serve people again, but only in outdoor structures like this one. And even with heaters, the winters in New York City are too cold to eat outside comfortably. So the industry suffered a lot. We asked the owners how they made it through this year. Even if an outdoor structure is well heated, that doesn't guarantee the guests can come. As soon as an inch of snow is forecast, outdoor structures have to be closed.
When the snow hits, it's really hard because the DOT says that we have to, stop service all of a sudden, and then you're thinking, what do you do with the staff?
But she says that with the way their outdoor structure was set up, they managed to make it through the winter.
We could set up so that we had individual booths, and therefore I think customers came by because they saw how safe we were doing everything.
She added that less tables fit in the structure because of the individual booths, but she said that strategy paid off in the long run because guests felt safe. At the end of this week, New York City and New Jersey will raise indoor dining capacity to 50%. The two places try to have the same capacity, so New Yorkers don't just go to New Jersey to dine in. Arian Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, China's traffic police raked in billions of dollars last year. One police officer explains why. And in Burma, some Chinese-owned factories go up in flames. Some suspect the Chinese Communist Party is behind the military coup there. Find out more in just a minute on NTD News.
%90 of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Traffic fines across China totaled nearly $50 billion in 2020. So how exactly did Chinese traffic police collect that astronomical amount of money from drivers? NTD's Tiffany Meyer gives us the answer.
Being a traffic police officer can be profitable in China. A CCP official and police officer explain why. Han De-yun is a lawyer from the southwestern city of Chongqing. He is also a member of the CCP's legislature. Earlier this month, he revealed that local traffic control departments have been making good profits with tricks and unreasonable rules. He brought it up during the CCP's annual Two Sessions meeting. According to official statistics, traffic fines across China totaled nearly $50 billion in 2020. That means the average fine per car is as high as nearly $200. According to Han, in certain areas, the number of violations in one street alone can reach over 40,000 a month. That's an average of 1,400 violations per day. They happen in heavily surveilled areas, such as some streets in Beijing. Han says he has discovered some unreasonable traffic rules. For example, some local authorities set up relatively low speed limits on good roads on purpose. This way, many drivers will be speeding without realizing. Some local authorities also set up different speed limits with short distances in between. This way, drivers have no buffer zone to slow down. Chinese police officer Mr. Li tells NTD that traffic fines are linked to the local economy and fiscal revenue.
30% of the fines go to the treasury of the local government, 70% to the traffic department, so they all profit from it. That is why traffic surveillance cameras are everywhere, and so many cars have been fined.
Li says fines have become a magic weapon that the traffic control department uses to collect money. This problem has existed for many years. Years ago, a former traffic police revealed on Chinese social media that his brigade had an annual fine quota. On average, each traffic police officer must issue fines of about $300 a day to fulfill the quota. A bonus will be given to those who over-fulfill the quota. Chinese-owned factories were set ablaze outside the largest city in Burma, also known as Myanmar. Some people in Burma are suspecting that the Chinese Communist Party is behind the military coup there. Security forces responded with violence and declared martial law in the area. The factory fires were entangled in the weeks of protests directed at the ruling military junta. The suburb outside the country's capital city is home to multiple Chinese-owned factories. Amid the uproar, the Chinese regime called on Burmese authorities to protect Chinese property and staff. Burma is currently under a military junta's rule after a recent coup. The junta is seen as friendly towards Beijing. Voice of America reports that Burma's security forces killed at least 39 people on Sunday. It's the deadliest day since the February 1st coup. The junta took power after claiming widespread election fraud. The Assistance Association for Political Prisoners says over 120 people have so far been killed since the junta took over.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is sending a tough message to the Chinese regime. This as is on his way to boost alliances in Asia to counter Beijing's growing threat. NTD's Juliet Song has the latest.
America's top diplomat is warning China to calm its aggression in the Indo-Pacific region.
We will push back if necessary when China uses coercion or aggression to get its way.
His remarks come during his first trip abroad as Secretary of State. The purpose of the trip is to boost U.S. alliances in Asia to counter the growing threat from the Chinese regime. And the first stop is Japan. The choice is no coincidence, as Japan is one of the U.S.'s most important allies in the region for several reasons. Japan is the world's third largest economy. It also maintains a robust military. The country also sits on a critical location. It's part of a chain of islands that stretch all the way to Malaysia. The chain stands as a line of defense between Beijing and America's west coast, making it hard for Beijing to launch nuclear missile attacks against the U.S. Japan also has been a loyal partner to the U.S. for decades. It was even one of the first to send aid after the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks. On Tuesday, State Secretary Blinken and Defense Minister Lloyd Austin met with their Japanese counterparts. Meetings like this only happen when two countries need to come together to deal with challenges. In this case, they're focused on China. Beijing has been flexing its muscles in Japan. The regime recently moved to allow its coast guards to open fire at foreign vessels. That's if they're in Beijing's waters. But both Beijing and Japan claim the disputed Senkaku Islands as their own, and the regime has sent ships toward the disputed islands multiple times.
The security environment is becoming increasingly severe, so it is necessary for us to make the Japan-US alliance even stronger.
The U.S. is reaffirming that it would defend Japan if the disputed islands are brought under attack. The two powers also conducted joint military exercises around the islands. Blinken and Austin are now heading to South Korea. They're also set to meet in person with top Chinese diplomats for the first time this Thursday. Julia Song, NTD News.
Still to come, Facebook reaches a deal with Rupert Murdoch's News Corp in Australia. It'll pay the media company for news content. And Bitcoin ATMs appear in New York City. They're cropping up in cities across the U.S., but with one major disadvantage compared to traditional ATMs. Find out more in just a moment on NTD News. Bitcoin ATMs are appearing at smoke shops in Montana, gas stations in the Carolinas, and delis in far-flung corners of New York City. It's a place where customers can buy or sell digital currency and sometimes extract hard cash. Conway G. Gittins reports.
New York City bodegas are already famous for consumers being able to buy just about anything, anytime, day or night. And now, Bitcoins are added to the list. Bitcoin ATMs are popping up in the city and around the country in corner stores, delis, gas stations, and other easy access consumer outlets, fueled by a frenzy in crypto trading that recently sent Bitcoin prices to a record high above $60,000 a pop. New York City deli owner Gamal Yaha doesn't even understand what Bitcoin is, but he does understand what it means for his bottom line.
It's bring a lot of people to the store. More people come into the store. People use the Bitcoin. They buy some stuff too from the store, and bring more business. So it's very good for the business.
Kiosk operators like CoinFlip and CoinCloud have installed thousands of Bitcoin ATMs, and executives say they are scouting out other spots in areas where their competitors have yet to reach. Chris Yim is CEO and co-founder of Liberty X, which provides the software for Bitcoin ATMs. He says his product is helping to bring the complex world of Bitcoin to the masses.
So what we found is actually that a lot of these local delis, convenience stores, they actually have the best locations because they are centerpieces of their neighborhood. So they made very natural partners for us to go that extra and last mile.
Users can buy or sell Bitcoins or a fraction using the ATM and send Bitcoins abroad, all with anonymity. But it comes at a much steeper price than cash and a traditional ATM. Fees can range from 6% to 20% of a total transaction, according to cryptocurrency compliance firm CipherTrace. Government agencies say that raises red flags, and there is concern about the potential for illicit activity. But that may not stop a Bitcoin ATM from popping up at a store near you. As of January, there were more than 28,000 Bitcoin ATMs in the United States, according to independent research site HowManyBitcoinATMs.com. More than 1/3 of those were put in place just the last 5 months alone.
Rupert Murdoch's News Corp has reached a content supply deal with Facebook in Australia. This comes after Facebook briefly shut down thousands of pages in the country. Gloria Zhou reports.
Facebook said it's reached a deal with Rupert Murdoch's News Corp in Australia on Tuesday. It's the next step to settle a dispute which briefly blacked out the social network's news feeds across the country. It also makes News Corp the first major media outlet to strike a deal with Facebook under controversial new laws that make Facebook and Google pay Australian publishers for their content. If they fail to do so, the new law lets the Australian government step in and force them to pay fees. In a statement, News Corp CEO Robert Thomson called the deal a landmark in transforming the terms of trade for journalism and said it would have a material and meaningful impact on our Australian news businesses. Facebook's one-week blackout in Australia last month sparked a storm of criticism, as the shutdown also affected not only news, but emergency services and public health pages. But the social media giant ultimately dropped its ban when Australia agreed to soften some parts of the new regulations. Like Facebook, Google had also objected to the new laws and threatened to withdraw from Australia. But it changed tack and signed deals with most media outlets, including News Corp, in the days leading up to the law. TV broadcaster and newspaper publisher Seven West Media previously said it intends to strike a Facebook deal, and rival Nine Entertainment announced Tuesday it had signed a letter of intent as well. A Facebook spokesperson declined to comment on the Nine negotiations.
Coming up, the UK says it's boosting police presence on the streets. This after the alleged kidnapping and murder of Sarah Everard. Find out more in just a minute on NTD News.
Trends may be fleeting, but values are timeless. We now bring you this new clothing brand with classic design and luxurious comfort. It's our way of sharing hope and inspiration from the world of Shenyun. We bring you Shenyun Dancer. Wear it with honor.
The British government says it is taking steps to provide further reassurance for women and girls. It's in response to the alleged kidnap and murder of 33-year-old Sarah Everard. NTD's Neil Woodrow reports.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson responds to the case of Sarah Everard. He's taking steps to ensure the streets are safe, with more focus on preventing sexual violence. The government is bringing in landmark legislation to toughen sentences and put more police on the streets. The government aims to roll out pilots of an approach named Project Vigilant around the country. It aims to have both uniformed and plainclothes officers attend areas around clubs and bars at night on city streets and increase the patrols around closing time. Speaking to a young man in Kingston, Surrey, he says he thinks the extra patrols are needed.
As a man, I can't really feel like what a woman feels at night, but I can understand it. But I feel like the government is doing the right thing, because sometimes, as having a sister as well, I feel uncomfortable when she's walking home at night.
His sister got catcalled at night in Kingston and feels some responsibility to look out for his older sister.
And I feel, as a younger brother, protecting my older sister, I feel like it's really wrong, and I feel really uncomfortable about it. Especially if she's with a boy, I feel like that's fine, but some girls on their own at night are actually really at risk at something happening to them.
Another man thinks that police alone is not the answer, but that more community support is needed.
Because just police is not going to change anything. You need probably more stuff. You need stuff like community focus groups, stuff like that. People that people can rely on and go to and say, okay, cool, you have my back if anything happens.
He went on to talk about the situation when there is no lockdown and large numbers of people are out and about.
There's girls on the streets, there's boys on the streets, and the police on the streets. They're not going to catch everyone. There needs to be more of a justification to how to help these people. There needs to be more of solutions, if that makes sense.
The suspect in custody, a serving British police officer, is set to go on trial in October, accused of the kidnap and murder of Sarah Everard. Neil Woodrow, NTD News.
The UK is heading to the Pacific to take on China's dominance.
I believe the United Kingdom can thrive in an ever more competitive world and fulfil our historic mission as a force for the good.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson announcing the biggest foreign policy and defence reset since the Cold War. The blueprint emphasises traditional allies in Europe and the United States, but it also signals a shift.
We will seek out friends and partners wherever they can be found, building a coalition for openness and innovation, and engaging more deeply in the Indo-Pacific.
Russia is still named as the top security threat, but China is now seen as the primary threat to economic security. Johnson acknowledges that China's human rights abuses, such as those in Xinjiang, cannot be ignored.
There is no question that China will pose a great challenge for an open society such as ours.
Johnson says the policy reset showcases post-Brexit Britain as an international outward-looking nation.
Coming up, a major breakthrough in piecing together the world's oldest mechanical computer. Researchers say it will show how the ancient Greeks saw the cosmos. And a Russian man with a few very unique pets, Geese. He walks his feathered friends every day and teaches them tricks. Find out more on NTD News. Israeli archaeologists recently discovered a trove of artifacts near the Dead Sea, including fragments of a biblical text from about 2,000 years ago. Take a look.
The Israel Antiquities Authority made a historic announcement on Tuesday. The text fragments, about 2,000 years old, bear biblical verse. It's a new piece of a compilation of ancient Jewish texts called the Dead Sea Scrolls, which give insight into Jewish society and religion before and after the time of Jesus.
For the first time in over 60 years, we have fragments of a biblical book that were discovered in an archaeological excavation.
The first Dead Sea Scrolls were first discovered in 1947. Until recently, new pieces of scrolls and parchment appeared on the black market, dug up by robbers. It spurred Israeli archaeologists to take action. Crews have rappelled off cliffs and used drones to map hundreds of cave-side hollows along an 18-kilometer strip. New findings also include an intact basket of 10,500 years old. They say it's likely the oldest in the world. Reporting by Lin, NTD News.
Researchers in the UK say they've made a major step in solving a mysterious ancient Greek astronomical device. They've created a new theoretical model that matches inscriptions on the device's remains.
Researchers in the UK say they've solved a major piece of an ancient astronomical puzzle.
They've made a new theoretical model of a 2,000-year-old astronomical calendar. The device was found in 1901 in a shipwreck off Greece.
It's a very fundamental part of technological history, and it takes back by a long, long time the origin of the ideas of making machines to calculate things.
It could be the world's oldest mechanical computer. Its insides look like a clock. About 30 bronze gears were cranked to calculate phases of the moon, ellipses, and other celestial information. But only about a third of it survived.
It's split into many pieces now. So actually piecing together what it did is a very difficult 3D jigsaw puzzle.
In 2005, 3D X-rays revealed thousands of letters hidden inside the fragments. Freeth and his colleagues have now created a model that matches the physical pieces and written inscriptions. It displays how the ancient Greeks saw the cosmos, including the sun, moon, and planets.
I think it is a major step, a major advance in our understanding of the mechanism, because it recreates what we believe was how the mechanism actually looked. And it's a stunning representation of the cosmos.
Researchers say it brings them one step closer to understanding the device's full capabilities and how accurately it predicted astronomical events.
The idea of making a calculating machine with bronze gear wheels says you can make those calculations with the turn of a hand. You don't need to do any complicated mathematics to calculate the consequences of your theoretical models of the cosmos. And this is a huge advance.
Researchers say the next step is to remake the mechanism using ancient techniques.
Here's a sight you don't see every day. A Russian man walking his pet geese. They're trained to wait at the corner, fly across crosswalks, and more.
Mashikov has 3 grown-up geese in his apartment. 2 females, Masha and Dasha, and a male, Yasha. Every day, he walks his pets for several hours along the city streets, where residents can pet them and take photos.
It is a pleasure to see them in the city. So interesting to get in touch with birds. They are so well behaved. They stopped and waited to cross the road.
The geese have their own 190 square meter room and eat almost the same food as Mashikov himself. Vegetables, fruits, bread, and even pasta. Mashikov taught his pets to respond to commands. The geese can sit down, hold, and fly on his command. 3 weeks ago, Masha laid more than 10 eggs, so she did not join the daily walk on Monday. Mashikov plans to keep up to 5 of her goslings and give the others to anyone who wants a pet.
I was thinking about which animals do not appear as pets. Hens are troublesome to hold. Ducks eat a lot. And the geese are beautiful and well behaved. They are the pets with charisma and temper.
Millions of daffodils growing in the fields of an English county are waiting to be picked. But this year, there's a shortage of pickers.
This host of golden daffodils herald the start of spring. But for farmers, these open blooms signal loss. The flowers need to be picked while they are still in bud.
Every spring season we require a certain number of people to crop the cut flowers, the cut daffodils in the fields, and normally we'd use 150 people to do that job, but those people just are not available. So this year it's 25.
Most seasonal workers decided not to come, so this year pickers are at a premium. Usually Taylor's bulbs harvest about 25 million daffodil stems, but they say only 6 million or so will be cut this year. This farm is in Lincolnshire, one of the largest flower-producing areas in England. Another director of this family firm says the shortage of pickers is due to this year's exceptional circumstances.
Well, even if we had 1,000 pickers in this field, we wouldn't harvest all the flowers. It'd be impossible. There are millions of flowers in this field. So there are always flowers that are left over, but we are picking less flowers than we normally would. And again, as I said, it was down to 2 things, partly Brexit, partly COVID.
There's been no government provision to allow migrant workers from the EU to enter UK to do this line of work. So far, it has only covered food crops, but not flowers.
The government has come up with a seasonal workers scheme, but unfortunately ornamental horticulture was not included in the pilot. We have been promised that it will be included in the future, but we don't know exactly when that's going to start. And so it's presenting us with an issue because we need to plan ahead.
With pandemic lockdown restrictions disrupting international travel, the usual Romanian pickers stayed away. Taylor's Bulbs are an established firm of over 100 years, supplying flower bulbs to the UK and Ireland.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com